Welcome to Couv.com. I'm David Madore. We have our guest here today, Tom Hann, and we're going to talk about coordination. Coordination is a process that could potentially open up a third solution for the BPA 500 kV lines and could potentially do some very good things for us when it comes to better, smarter solutions for even the CRC light rail tolling project. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you.
So the process is called coordination. And can you give a concise definition of what is coordination and what does it mean to Clark County?
Well, coordination is a state and federally mandated process.
Okay.
State and federal government must meet with local government in the process of coordination, and they must reach consistency at the local level to make sure what they're proposing is consistent with the dictates of local government through local codes.
Okay. And you correct me if I don't have this right, okay? I'm going to try to summarize with the way I think it works. If let's say the county commissioners are concerned about a project, let's say the 500 kVA BPA line, they can go to the BPA and say, hey, BPA, we want you to sit down with us and address our concerns because we're not happy with the process, or we'd like to be able to include an alternate route, go east into the public land, and you don't even have that on your list. And we want you to coordinate with us. Does that obligate them to sit down and talk with us and address that concern?
Absolutely. Federal and state law compels them to meet and coordinate, go through the coordination process. So county commissioners, as a local branch of government, can invoke the coordination process.
Okay.
And they are compelled to it by their own laws.
They're bound by law, federal law, that they must sit down and work with the local governing agency in order to address those concerns. Correct. As far as you know, so far, has any Clark County agency sat down and invoked this coordination process to get our local concerns addressed?
I'm not aware that that's happened, but I don't track as close as I could or should to know whether that happens or not. But any local branch of government, any local government agency, including any taxing district, for example, a cemetery district, as a local branch of government.
All the way down to the lowest level.
To the lowest level. That's what our founders believed in, was self-governance, and government should be at the local level. So a cemetery district can invoke coordination with state and federal agencies, and they come to the table as equals in that process.
That sounds like a pretty significant tool that so far it doesn't look like we cashed in on. It's a resource that basically you just use the words sit down as equals. Right
Correct.
now the federal government says we are the authority and we are just simply a small local agency or county commissioners, and not knowing we have this ability to sit down as peers and work things out.
They believe they're the authority, and they're allowed to believe that when we don't stand on our rights as citizens or as local government and come to that table as equals in that process. So we need to better learn what our rights are and exercise our rights if we want to keep them.
Okay. This coordination, is that the official word or is that an abbreviation for something longer? What is, how do you really define?
That's what the process is called, is coordination.
And where does it have its roots? What body of law defines that?
It should be it's in a number of acts. It's in the Endangered Species Act, it's in the Air Quality Act, the Water Quality Act. It's referenced in a number of acts.
What about NEPA?
I think it's required as part of NEPA. NEPA is the National Environmental Protection Agency, or Act rather. There's also SEPA, which is the State Environmental Protection Act, and that falls in Washington State under Department of Ecology. So they're the ones that are administrators over environmental protection in Washington. Those acts require coordination. Coordination, as I understand it, and I don't have those notes with me, but it is not codified at the federal level, but it is a guideline, and that guideline is referenced in all of these acts. So it's well understood what it is. It ties into our 10th Amendment state sovereignty rights, that they must coordinate with local government. They are not the final authority. They have to coordinate.
So this sounds like a game changer to me. This is right now, up to this point, we've been small, little local governments talking to these federal governments and pretty much thinking that it's an uneven table. You guys, we can't control you. You really don't have any obligation to satisfy our needs other than we go up and we speak in front of the microphone for our timed 3 to 5 minutes. 3 minutes. And we've been heard, and they ignore that, and they go on and do what they predetermined to do anyway.
Right.
This short circuits all that process and say, okay, sit down at the table, we're peers, we need to talk, and you're not gonna move ahead until this process is satisfied, right? Am I exaggerating it?
If we don't compel them to the process of coordination, we're giving them everything they want for free.
So we're forfeiting the fight if we don't insist that they coordinate with us.
Right. And part of what we're forfeiting is our property rights. Property rights are under attack. The process of coordination can help citizens protect their rights. So coordination is a process that a local government agency can invoke, and then it compels them to come to the table as equals. Citizens or organizations are not able to invoke coordination. But under the 10th Amendment, we have standing legally if our rights are infringed upon and our local government has not invoked coordination and reached consistency. We can hold local government accountable to not going through that process.
Tell me if this is right. The situation right now, that there's a couple of situations that Clark County faces. One is we've got a number of, well, several groups of citizens that have done a pretty good job organizing themselves. You've got Better Way BPA, you got No Way BPA, you've got these citizens that are basically thinking they're standing to protect their private property rights because they don't want these new 500 kV lines to go through their backyard or to have a negative impact on their private property.
Or their health.
And the NEPA process is all we've been using without coordination right now. And so you've got this group of citizens that are pitted against this group of citizens. They're going, oh, here, and they say, no, not here. And there's a third way which is to push it back farther east enough where there is public property where it's not going to impact private citizens at all, or at least for the bulk of the route. And we haven't invoked this process, so we've allowed them to just simply say, well, you got choice A or B, you guys fight it out, and we'll make the choice. And they haven't sat down at the table, and we've kind of forfeited that fight. There's
we don't have to accept
choice.
Their choices.
Well,
coordination allows for those alternatives to be explored.
Let's suppose the county commissioners say, hey, we want to be able to represent our citizens more effectively. We want to be able to sit down as equals with the PPA and make sure that we are on equal footing negotiating this.
They can and should do that.
How do they do it?
They write a letter
to
BPA. The government agencies that are promoting this should be identified in part of the documentation that they're providing regarding the power line routing. So whichever formal entity that is should be identified. I haven't looked at that myself, so I don't know the name specifically. But local government, county commissioners in this case, because they've got the larger jurisdiction than cities do, or a cemetery district, county commissioners not only can but should invoke coordination, and they should invite citizens to participate in that process. It should be an open and transparent process. There should be public comment, and citizens should learn about this process and hold local government accountable to that full process.
How do we learn more about it?
There is an organization in Nampa, Idaho, called Trademark America. Fred Kelly Grant got his law degree, was practicing law for a long time, and he always detested property rights cases. He didn't want to get involved with property rights. It was the last area of law that he ever wanted to practice. But he learned about coordination. As a patriot, he was certainly concerned with Constitution and federal and state government usurping authority not granted. So he was looking to protect some farmers. So he got involved in a property rights case and really discovered coordination and started sharing it with people. Northern California and Southern Oregon, there's now a Sheriffs for the Constitution group that has formed up, and sheriffs, as one branch of local government, are learning everything they can now about coordination.
Okay.
We've got Forest Service trying to shut down Forest Service roads because they want no people on certain lands. So sheriffs are now involved in the coordination process. So National Forest Service Department cannot go close down roads prohibiting access to citizens without coordinating with sheriffs.
Really? So I'm curious. Fred Kelly was his name?
Fred Kelly Grant.
Fred Kelly Grant. Kelly's his middle name.
Right.
Okay. Did he have success using this process on any particular cases he's working on, or not? Well, not cases. Wasn't a lawsuit. It was basically a process.
There were lawsuits in some cases. I mean, he's an attorney, so he has filed documents or filed suit to get proper attention. There was a case, I don't know the exact location, either Idaho or Montana, somewhere near where he lives. They wanted to remove cows from grazing on BLM land. So they came in and told these ranchers, the spotted frog, we've done some research, and there's a spotted frog, and it appears to be an endangered species, and the cows are trampling the spotted frog. So the first,
really happened, right?
the first question that would come to mind is, why is everything that's spotted endangered? So I don't think Fred ever got that solved, but he went through the coordination process with them, and he asked them to provide their information on why they had to remove these cows from the BLM land. So they shared some information about the spotted frog. Well, he went, met with some other ranchers, actually found downstream of this waterway, there were ranches, and there were millions of spotted frogs. On the particular piece of BLM land that they wanted the cows removed, there weren't many spotted frogs. So he went back through the coordination process and invoked another act, the Data Quality Act. The Data Quality Act compelled this agency, I don't know if it was Forest Service or which agency, but it compelled them to share their information, their analysis, and the basis of their conclusions that this spotted frog was endangered.
Show me your source material.
He called out the Data Quality Act. They had to provide everything, their source, all the way to their source information and the basis of their conclusions that they were trying to act on.
So it provided authority that the federal agency needed to respond to.
Correct. So they didn't respond very quickly, but they ended up turning over the research. He reviewed the research. He got permission from the farmers where the spotted frog was on their private land. He negotiated permission from them to take these federal agents onto their property and observe the health of the spotted frog population. So he was able to, because in the Data Quality Act compelled them to share their research. Their research was isolated to this area, and it didn't research this area.
So it showed the research
and there was
to
a
be
thriving
flawed
population.
because it was incomplete.
Incomplete. So their conclusions were based on incomplete analysis. So the entire thing was shut down.
Okay.
So they won their case against having to take the cows off the BLM land.
So it turns on the lights. It provides the access to information. They can't just say, we're going to, we're authorities and we'll dispense to you our conclusions based upon our expertise. Instead, they have to show you the basis upon which they make a decision.
You're equals at the coordination table. If
Great.
they have data, they should share it. And what's interesting about what they found out after the fact, the cows walking through the wetlands area next to the stream
actually helped?
Would depress the soil. That soil would, or that depression would fill with water, and that was a great habitat for the spotted frog.
Okay. Happy for the spotted frogs. Okay.
Exactly.
All
it's
right,
not endangered and actually helped by the cows.
All right. So the coordination is not a law. It's not litigation. It's not a lawsuit. It's not. It's basically it's a obligation for, in this case, federal authorities to sit down as peers and cooperate, coordinate. Correct. Communicate with you as equals. And I assume that if they're favorable, they will, and everybody will get along fine. We'll get through the process with much better communication, much better understanding, more informed decisions. And if they don't, then you can fall back on some legal process that would say, hey, you understand the law says this, you're not doing that, so therefore we're going to bring suit that will compel you to do that.
Absolutely.
And hopefully they'll...
And suits have been brought.
They'll coordinate.
Telling federal or state agencies you did not satisfy coordination, and it's gone to a judge, and the judge agreed you did not satisfy coordination, and they've had to retract, regulatory efforts that they've put forward or actions that they've taken where they didn't satisfy the process. Judges have ruled against state and federal government when they did not follow the process.
So it's a very powerful tool. It's enforceable.
Yep.
And hopefully you won't have to enforce it. You've just simply got people there that want to be able to serve and use their authority properly. Is there a website where people can find out more?
Yep, trademarkamerica.org.
Okay, trademark, where's that name come from?
I don't know the history of the name, but I had the pleasure of sitting down with Fred for breakfast one morning a year ago. And he shared, the spotted frog story. And at the time, he was wanting to do some videos to help communicate to citizens what their rights are, better understand the coordination process. It turns out his daughter, I think Stacy is her name, is taking over that portion of the business right now. He was unable to attend a recent function down in Northern California at the Sheriff's Association because he's back in Washington, D.C. The coordination process is effective for citizens to protect their property rights. And it has been discovered by the Obama administration that it is impeding their efforts to push forward considerable amount of more regulation. So Fred has suspended his work with Trademark America, and he is now, I think, full-time back in D.C. trying to protect the coordination process. Like I mentioned, it's not codified, it's a guideline, and that guideline is referred to by a number of coded laws. He's trying to protect the coordination process. The way we can help him is that we exercise the coordination process locally. The more people use it, the better that tool is going to be available for us to use to protect our property rights.
So if there be anything that has to do with the federal government, this has to do with federal processes, right?
Federal and state.
Oh, really? State?
Coordination is levels of government coordinating when they want something done at the lowest level or at the local level.
Okay, but in other words, state can, it all falls back on the federal agency you're trying to deal with, right? In other words, a citizen has a problem with something that the feds are trying to do, some federal agency, and whether it be any level of government, including state, can approach the federal agency and say, we want you to coordinate with us. The body of law says you need to do this. Let us sit down as peers. We'll get this worked out. So it sounds like most people don't know about this.
Correct.
Most elected officials don't know about this. And one of the smart things that we as citizens can do is to inform our elected representatives of this process and say, hey, you can go to bat for us as peers with the federal agency so that we can all be get better, wiser decisions on this. We can know that we're heard and our concerns are addressed. So they can ask their elected officials to do that. The elected officials themselves hopefully already know that. It doesn't sound like they do, but that is something that we ought to be able to do. Are you familiar with, I talked with Stacy this about a week ago, and she indicated that there's National Park Service is trying to stop this coordination process to make themselves an exception. Have you heard anything about that?
I think that's what Fred's back in D.C. trying to protect or prevent that from happening.
I think that Stacy was saying that I think it was August 12th or something like that, that if any agency, any federal, or I'm sorry, any county commissioners or city council or any position, if there's any concerns on anything, to write that letter before August 12 and say we want to coordinate, so that even if they say, well, you can't do it after this certain date, you're grandfathered in. You already expressed your concerns, you already made your request, and hopefully you still retain that right.
Every branch of local government, based on that, should send that same letter and make sure that they preserve that right.
Okay.
If they are to represent us and help protect our rights, they should be asking to participate in the coordination process.
Okay, so I expect that the starting point on that would be to go to the website, trademarkamerica.org, call and talk with, they have the phone number there for Stacy, and ask them, who do we write to, how do we word this letter so that we get in the queue here, at least we get registered that we want to be able to employ this process so that we can take advantage of it. Right?
They should do that. We can get that information and hand it to them at their next city council meeting or their county commissioner meeting.
Are you planning on doing that?
So I would be happy to do that.
That'd be great.
Especially if we have this deadline coming up.
Yep, that would be very
But
good.
we need to invoke our right to that process and protect that process.
You might even draft a letter based on their input from Trademark America, so that here's the letter. All you need to do is take the form, fill it out, fine tune it for the specific issues that we're having to deal with, send it in so that they don't have to go past that deadline trying to figure out what to do.
What's right.
Yeah.
They have done seminars and training. I think January they did some out in Clarkston, Washington.
Okay.
I was tied up that weekend. I was desperate to get out there and participate in the training. I'm still going to work to try and have them do a seminar here locally. So we can certainly invite our local officials, local representatives
That would be great.
to participate in the training. They also offer webinars. So it's something that they could probably do online at a convenient time.
Okay.
So there's no excuses for not understanding it and being able to comply with that.
Since you're taking lead on this, as you find out about any possibility for learning more about this, webinars, videos, meetings, whatever, let us know at cuv.com and we'll see what we can to spread the word. You mentioned that they were trying to make some videos. Were some videos made?
I was offering to do some videography for them to try and get those videos produced because once I sat down with Fred for breakfast and heard about this amazing process, I immediately was on board with every citizen needs to know about this. So I was offering, my help, at no cost just to get this out to the citizens so that they understood.
That would be great. At least one DVD was made that I watched about a year ago of Fred speaking, and I was just dumbfounded. I thought I never heard such a thing. And the stories of success that he's had is quite encouraging. Because we feel like we're little fish, we're small compared to federal government. They can just come and tell us that's the way it is, and you got to live with it. And this turns the table, at least makes it flat, right?
Yeah. Well, government is the people, and coordination reminds federal and state that their just powers come from the consent of the governed. So we the people are the government. Federal and state are just another branch of institutional government, but we're the institution of self-governance. So we are an equal because they derive their powers from us. So we expect them to coordinate with us as a check and balance on that process.
That what you just stated there indicate, that just reminds me that you are well educated in the principles of our government. You understand our founding documents. You understand how it's supposed to work.
I'm learning.
And you're in the process of educating other people about that. That is fantastic. Getting back to our roots, understanding what our principles are, what we can do to not be cynical and think, oh, it's all lost. No, we really can make a difference if we're armed with...
If we understand our rights.
The truth.
We understand the law.
Yes.
And we apply it.
Great. Okay, you want to share anything else, or are we...
I think that covers it. I think, I would put a call to action out to our local bodies of government.
Okay.
To invoke the coordination process and maybe go a step further and appoint a citizens advisory board for that branch of government to routinely interact with them on that process of coordination. involve the citizens in that process. They're representing us, but allow us to participate in that process.
Great.
We certainly need to hold them accountable to it. So partner with us and let's do it right.
I can think of Bonneville Power, Federal Transit Administration, Federal Highway Administration, and their whatever branch of government has to do with historic properties, with our all the historic properties that they're talking about demolishing in the process of this light rail tolling project. I would think that it would be appropriate to send letters to each of them saying, "Hey, we have some concerns here. We want you to coordinate with us."
Absolutely.
Great. Okay. Thank you for your help in doing that.
You
I
bet.
appreciate you sharing that with us, because we need a game changer. And
Yes, we do.
That'll do it. Thank you, sir.
Very good.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, that wraps it.